Hey guys, welcome to SD Drain Ditch Training 2025. My name is Luke Hallbachen, and I will be going through SD Drain Ditch with you guys, showing you some of the ins and outs of the program.
My name is Scott Horvick. I'm with Rust Sales, and I'll be chiming in periodically too.
So the first thing that we want to talk about is the Rust Sales RTK GPS. This is an option that you guys can have for if you're having to get rid of your John Deere GPS globes because your dealer's shutting down their towers. We do have an option for you guys as well. This is a standalone kit that would be mounted directly to the back of your PX5 tablet. And this kit does come with a base station or a tripod that will get mounted in the field with you. But it ensures that you have quality GPS all the time. So it's kind of nice to have. Again, it mounts to the back of the PX5R, and then the dummy antenna goes on the scraper or implement, which is kind of nice because we like to keep the brains in the cab where it's hopefully dry and out of the vibration, and then we put a less expensive antenna back on the scraper or implement. So that is the PX5R RTK GPS.
Yeah, you can talk to your dealers about that.
Yep. Rust Sales Support. We do have a couple of websites that you guys can go to for support, cheat sheet, cable guides, how-to videos, and stuff like that. One of them is manuals.rustsales.com. The other is sddrain.com. They both have support tabs that you guys can go into. The next thing that we really emphasize with support is our remote support. This is with your internet hotspot or just an internet access point. This allows us to log into your computers, make changes, go through the program with you if you have questions and stuff like that. Next, we've got our online chat windows. There's a Let's Chat icon on our Rust Sales website. It's not necessarily for tech support, but if you guys have any questions at all about SD products, and tech support, stuff like that, you guys can type into the chat and it actually spams out to a bunch of us, and then we will get back to you, hopefully with a good answer. So
there's a chat window that's on the SD Drain website.
Correct. Yep. It looks just like the Let's Chat in the bottom right corner. First, we're going to talk about John Deere installation. So for guys running John Deere tractors, first off, make sure you plug your cables in when the tractor is off. We have had some issues in the past where guys have tried to plug in with power on, and the tractor ends up throwing a code. There's a reset process you have to go through. It's like a power cycle process. It takes a little bit, but just to ensure a good connection, make sure you plug in our controller and cabling with the tractor off, then power it on. And what you should see to verify that you're actually connected is an auto with a line through it on your SCV screen. So auto with a line through it indicates that there's a controller plugged into your tractor. And once that happens, you should be good to go from there on out. 2023 and newer John Deere articulating tractors, they moved the connector from the back panel. So every connector used to be under the slow moving vehicle sign. They moved it into the articulation on the four-wheel drives. There's a main power harness right here that follows the spine of the tractor, and you'll find that plug right about here. I've seen it sometimes where this plug has been down and further down into the articulation. You kind of have to dig it out, but the main thing is follow this main harness down, and you'll find that 10-pin Metro Pack in that junction. Case installation. So for guys running case tractors, 2010 or older quads, your connection is on the outside of the cab on the passenger side. I'm not sure what harness to follow, but it's in this group of harnesses here tied together. It's this connector right here. It's a little 6-pin Deutsch on 2011 or newer, and this includes all of your 2024, 2025. When they put the new AFS Connect cabs in, this connector is all in the same spot. Open up the passenger door, and you'll dig in this cubby. Usually there's a cup holder right here. That's kind of the reference we use to find that. It's usually like right under the cup holder buried in here. And then on the right, we've got examples of the 1-3 switches or the enable switches that they use in the case tractors. Again, these are this style was from like 2011 up to 2022, I believe. Maybe some carryover ones in 2023. This style is 2010 or older. they have the physical 1-3 switch.
If you don't have a 1-3 switch, you need to talk to your dealer in order to get a 1-3 switch installed on those older 2010 or older units.
2023 and newer Magnums. So if you remove that back panel, they got rid of all the computers that are on the back side of the tractor, but they did leave the plug here. So this plug is still on the back side. I know some of the older tractors used to be more down in this area, so the bottom left corner of that back panel, but the connector is now on the right side, and you'll find it over here for guys with front wheel assist Magnums. The new AFS Connect cabs that we were talking about, this is what their armrests look like. We do have connection guides available for you, even for the older tractors as well. There's some setup. If your tractor's never been ran with a scraper, there is some setup that you guys have to go through. But with the new AFS Connect cabs, we do have a guide on how to connect those. But just in short, click on the tractor icon on your screen, go to your remotes tab here on the right side, and then scroll down until you find auto auxiliary control valve. You'll then enable whatever valve you're using, there's two functions. There's an A and a B. And then what you can do is program A to control remote, 1 through 6 or whatever it is. You can actually select the different remote you want to be on. So if you've got the 3/4 inch Pioneer couplers on the back on remote 1, you can easily just plug into remote 2 with the smaller 1/2 inch like are on scrapers. And then just program in your screen, tell it you're connected to rear 2, and then turn A on. The next thing is you're going to want to program this gray keypad to enable auxiliary control. So this gray keypad, if you guys click into one of them and it's not programmed yet, it'll bring you to the programming screen for these buttons, and you can choose the function that each of these buttons do. So I usually tell guys to if you've got an open button up here that you can use these to enable your auxiliary control. Cat installation, we can control C's and D's, and even some B's if they have the ISO kit installed on them. And an easy way to tell is if the ISO plug is on the back of the tractor, likely it has all of the connections in the cab for us to control. The year range is up until they switch to the Fendt cab. So if you guys have, I think you can tell quite easily by the hood that's on these tractors, the interior of the cab still looks the same as the old C's and D's, but their hoods have changed. And that's a good indicator. Again, ask your dealer if you're not quite sure, and then go ahead and connect our cables. You'll find those connection points in the fender on the right side inside the cab. So take this fender off, and it's the same T that your steering plugs into. We have had some issues where the steering controllers do kick us off the network. They prioritize themselves and kick every other source of control off. So if you're having issues with that, I would try disconnecting your steering system from that T that we plug into. So unplug or take off this cover, and then find that I think it's a CAN extension is what it's labeled as. John Deere GPS configuration. This is for all receivers. It's not just 3000s and 6000s. So the new 7000s and 7500s as well. They're all the same configurations. One of the things with the new 7500s or 7000s that I guess 7500s that they're promoting is the satellite RTK. Do not use that with drainage products. And I know even your John Deere dealer will tell you that as well. You do need to have a 7500 with the radio package on the back of the globe. And that's easy to tell if you've got the little stubby or the little whip antenna on the back of your globe. Then you've got a radio and you're good to go for ditching.
But you'd want a 7500. You'd want to have a base in the field, and then your rotor on the implement itself.
Correct. Yep. As these dealerships have started to take down their RTK towers, we've seen a lot of guys switch over to this. They'll have a quick survey base in the field, and then that will be your new base station that takes place of your dealer's tower network in a sense. John Deere programming kit. So This is for guys, as you're still using these towers that we're talking about, you can use this programming kit to quickly switch between towers. It plugs into the ISO connector on the back of the tractor. There's a T cable that you guys would get from us. Then that T extends up into the cab and plugs into our main power harness. So as you guys are programming your globes with this kit, you'll plug the connector into our main harness, and you'll see the globe pop up on your 2630 or 4640 display, whatever you guys have. Make your changes, program your globe, and then disconnect that cable. The reason that we have you disconnect is because your tractor won't know what globe is associated with the steering and which one is on the implement. So just make sure you disconnect before operating. Trimble GPS configuration. We can configure these through the SD drain monitor. We've got an app on our desktop or on the computer called Ag Remote. You guys will hardwire your connection from our main power harness up to the computer. There's a serial port in the top right side of the computer. And then find this Ag Remote icon, click on File, Connect, and then you should be able to change all of your settings in your receiver. It's like a 15-step process or instruction sheet that you guys can find on manuals.rustsales.com or also sddrain.com, and then click on the support tab. Ag Leader 6500s and 7500s. These are kind of the same way. It's a lot easier just to go to our support page, find your programming guide, and just go step by step through that as well. And I'll kind of give a brief overview of how it works. But what happens is you'll actually connect to these receivers with your phone. They've got a Wi-Fi, or the 7500s have a Wi-Fi capability. Some 65s do, but not all of them. But the 7500s for sure do. You'll connect to it with your phone, and then you will make your changes. And you'll actually have to then hardwire it to your computer. Again, that's kind of a brief overview. What I would do is just go to our help page and just find that cheat sheet guide to help you program your globes. All right, starting the program. I'm going to go through the program, and I'm just going to show you guys some of the buttons and how things are laid out in SD Drain. So double click on Ditch. 3.2.5 is the most recent version of SD Drain out there. Click Agree. And then this next page, the first page that you come to is going to be all of your file maintenance. We've got grower, farm, field. You've probably seen this file format before in other programs like SMS or some of your John Deere software. We've got grower, farm, field. Every time you guys go into a new field or enter a new field, hit the plus button and just add the name of a new field. That way you guys can keep everything organized. I'm just going to add one called test and then hit OK. And now you'll see in the drop down, I've got two fields. I've got field and I've also got test. I'm going to go back into field just because I have a pre-planned ditching LiDAR maps available to me. Again, we'll go through LiDAR in a little bit later, but I'm going to click on new project. I'm going to hit continue. Notice in this project window, I've got a couple of older dated projects. Well, if you're coming back day to day and you're ditching on the same field, keep clicking on that same date as the previous day you were out there. That way you'll keep all of your ditch lines in the same overhead map. If you do start a new project and you're in the same field, you'll just have two separate sections of that field. There'll be just two different maps of what you did in each day. So I'm going to click new project because we're starting from scratch. Then I'm going to hit continue. And then the next page is going to be all of your layers. So we've got guidance. Most of the time, you guys won't be using the guidance tab, but I do have a pre-planned field. So I'm actually going to load my ditch lines. This guidance tab is actually kind of helpful because what happens is you guys see how I selected ditch lines. If I had ditched in this field last year, I would have a dated ditch line SH or shape file, which then you can load the previous year's ditch lines on your overhead, and you guys can see what exactly you ditched in that field, which is super helpful for guys if you're ditching some super flat ground and you can't quite tell where exactly you ditched, and all you want to do is clean out some ditches, well, what you can do is load last year's ditch lines, and then you can see exactly where you ditched the previous year. You don't have to do this, but it's definitely helpful. Um, Again, too, if you want to maybe throw a hired hand out in the tractor, you can load up these guidance lines as shape files. So you just select on, like I said, the previous year's date, and it will pop up all of those lines that you had ditched in the previous year. It'll look something just like this. The next tab is the elevation tab. This is going to be your lidar.grd file. So if I click on this, you can see here I've got a lidar map that loads up. This is just going to show you the terrain change throughout the whole field. So these are super helpful for guys wanting to get ditching done really, really quickly. So elevation works alongside your background image. So I'm actually going to load we'll do a flow depressions, and you guys can see here when I load that how it displays the potential hot spots or potential wet spots throughout that ditch. You can see the red blobs throughout the whole field. Those are potential wet spots that you might want to end up dumping dirt in. But then again, that's kind of up to you on what you guys do. But you can see how this is super helpful in telling you where exactly to put a ditch. And we'll go through LiDAR maps later on in the presentation. So then I'm going to hit Start Project, and this will start my project. I'm going to go just because I have GPS, or I don't have any GPS connected, and I'm actually going to disconnect the controller as well, just because we're more so in an office use setting.
Just to clarify, like for the layers, these are different files that are stacked on top of each other. So we have like the guidance line is a layer, and then stacked on top of that is going to be the LiDAR map, and then we'll have the flow depressions map. So you can see that the flow depressions is transparent. You can see the LiDAR map underneath that. I think that it's kind of covering up. Zoom in a little bit on that map a little bit. You'd be able to see like the guidance lines when they have the arrow, but the where the different colors are, where the cursor is now, that's going to be your flow depressions. And then there's also the flow depressions are going to be the little spine like tree branches that are on there. And then those are on top of the guidance lines. You'd be able to see on some of those where the arrows are on the end of the guidance line. So at the moment that flow depression map is covering up some of the guidance lines.
Yep.
But the guidance lines pretty much match up on where the flow depressions are.
Correct. Yep. And the nice thing is too is with these, typically, so since we had a pre-planned field more so for demonstration purposes, you wouldn't have had any guidance lines. If I just get rid of these ones, so I'm going to get rid of my guidance, I'm just going to go none. And then if I hit Start Project, you're going to see here that I no longer have that arrow or that ditch line to select on. Instead, it's just showing you where the ditch could potentially go. So like what Scott said is that these depressions or these flow depressions are going to show you where the natural flow of water is in your field. Again, he mentioned the little spine looking tree branches. You don't have to ditch all these, but it's just kind of giving you a picture or a visual of where that water is coming from, and then heading into that more major flow depression line on your background, or throughout your field, I should say. So I'm going to load those guidance lines back up just so we can get some side profiles. All right. So now I'm going to go around the screen and kind of go through buttons and what they do and when you would use them. Starting in the top right side, I've got Start Survey. This is the button you'll press when you're at either the top or the bottom of your ditch and ready to survey. So you've got your scraper up in survey position, and you're ready to hit Start Survey. So click it. It's going to ask you, are you surveying to the outlet or from the outlet? You still need to make that decision. We're going to leave that up to you to decide which way the water is going to flow. But then you would start driving after you clicked to or from outlet. And then you would get to the end of your ditch, and then hit stop survey. This button will switch to stop survey when you're actually surveying, so that way you can stop your survey. And then you'll see a side profile generate after you've hit that stop survey button. Down below that, we've got zoom in and zoom out. Pretty self-explanatory there on your overhead map. The next button down is auto disabled, or your enable button. So this is the button you guys would press after you do your survey or after you complete your survey. This is going to allow the screen to take control of your tractor, or our controller is going to start controlling your tractor. So start survey, choose your direction, hit stop survey, and then auto enable this button right here. Again, with Case and John Deere tractors, you still have the tractor side to enable. So remember that auto with a line through it that we were talking about earlier. On John Deere tractors, you still have to click the corresponding SCV lever forward for control. That auto with a line through it needs to switch to just auto. And the same thing on Case tractors is you need to enable your armrest or the tractor side to control, or to let us control your scraper. Below that, we have the line menu. What this does is keep track of all of the different surveys that you guys would have performed, and also the different cut lines that you would have done. I have a G right here for guidance lines, since I've got some pre-planned guidance layers. So you're going to see here, if I click on this one up here, notice it highlights in green right here. Well, it also highlighted that same ditch down below. This menu, this line menu, is helpful if you guys want to name your ditches. Some guys, what they'll do is they'll name they'll name and save all of the ditches in their John Deere display, and then they will name each ditch according to the ditches in their John Deere display. So you can name it here, click on this, highlight it, change it. I'm just going to hit cancel. But really, that's kind of the main thing, other than if you guys screw up a ditch. Let's say you've surveyed in one spot, but then you realize that you actually should have gone, in a different direction, and you want to get rid of this survey. What you do is click on the survey on the overhead map, and then click on the eyeball or the show hide button. So if you click this, it's going to get rid of that ditch in the overhead. Notice my ditch line is now gone. If I want to bring it back up, I do need to go find that line again. It's a 1968, and then if I hit the show button, now that ditch line just reappeared. Again, we don't delete lines, so if you accidentally hide the wrong one, it's still there and it's still available for you to find. There's a world view. If, let's say, you wanted to view these ditch lines or these different ditches, if you click on the world button, what you'll see is the side profile down below, and your list will be up above. So if you click through these, you guys can see how each survey looks a little bit different. Then if you click on this graph here, it's going to pop your overhead map back up, and you'll be able to visually see those ditches on the overhead. That is the line menu. Down below that, we have the settings button. This button down here is kind of your safety. So if you're ever lost, you're trying to find different settings and change things, and you have no idea how to get back to your main run page, click this button in the bottom right corner. It's either settings or main screen. It only brings you to two different locations. So settings and main screen, which would be your main run screen. To the left of that, we have the edit button. This is for editing a survey. So I'm going to give you an example here. So let's just say this ditch right here. So what happened is I surveyed through a pothole, and instead of cutting out this 6 inches of dirt right here, or however much it might be, I would rather fill this pothole in. So what you can do is go to the edit window, and then now with your finger, you can slide this side profile around. And then what you can do is place an X. So it works in pairs. If you place an X up here, so by tapping, you can also place an X over here by tapping again. And what's going to happen is when you hit preview or the preview button, it's going to draw a line between those 2 points, and that's going to be your new elevation layer. So your blade will control to this point and it won't follow the terrain like before.
So all it's doing is deleting the survey points that are between those two X's that you.
Correct. Yep. And then the nice thing too about this is that when you do this, you can really change the amount of dirt that you guys move. So I'm going to undo this and I'll show you guys again here. So if I hit undo, notice down here in my legend, I've got 63 yards of dirt to move. Well, let's just say I want to fill this in instead. So I'm going to place my X and place my X. If you click out into this open area, it actually grabs the last data point available in your survey. So notice I've got my two X's now, one here and one here. I'm going to hit preview. And now look at my cut yards. I've only got 35 yards of dirt to remove. So you guys can kind of do some planning in that regard as to where you want to put your dirt, or if you can, minimize the amount of dirt that you guys are taking out by editing your side profiles.
And remember that cut, that's an approximation. It's not like it's an approximation given what your survey is and how wide your ditch is and all that stuff. So it's not a solid number.
Correct. Yep. We are just trying to give you a good guess on the amount of dirt that you need to remove from that ditch. Also, you can see your fill yards. So we've got roughly 19.4 yards of fill. And again, like what Scott said, if you've got a 8-foot blade and a 15-foot ditch bottom, we are measuring and trying to base this number off of your ditch width. So that'd be the ditch bottom that Scott was talking about.
And we'll go through those setup numbers a little bit later on.
Yep. So I'm just going to click undo since I don't want to change this. The other thing that you guys can do in this menu is change your min grade and max grade, and also your DGL offset. When you guys change your min grade in this screen, you guys can see how that changes how the ditch is going to be cut pretty quickly. So 0.05 to a 0.06, 0.07. Just so you guys know, a 0.05 grade is about 6 inches every 1,000 feet of travel. So a 0.1 would be a foot. That's just kind of our reference that we tell guys. Usually in our area, a 0.05 is pretty popular. I've seen some guys get down to 0.03, which is getting pretty flat. So just be aware of what your grades are set to before you start cutting. We'll just switch this 0.05 again. I'm going to hit done editing. So that is the edit window. Again, like you guys have kind of seen, we've got our side profile on the bottom here. There is a legend, and I will show you this here later, but this just gives you some basic information about the ditch, cut yards, fill yards, and length. And then you've got different colors in the side profile here showing you what's what. So all of the green is dirt that you guys need to remove. And then also here, we've got a couple of lines in this area. Well, that's just an indication of past depth. So there's a couple settings that I'm going to touch on later that will explain this a little bit more. The red line is going to be the line that SD Drain has given you to where you should cut your final grade to. And then I'll just kind of move to the nudge arrows next here. If you nudge up and down, notice that red line stays put. That is the line that SD Drain is saying, hey, you just got to cut to here and everything will work out. But what the nudge arrows in the top left allow you to do is either cut more or less dirt out by moving that final grade line up and down. So watch here, I'm 5 inches, 6 inches. This is my offset value here. So I'm 7.5 inches offset from my original survey or the red line. So as I click this up, I'm going back home or back to my initial red line. So that's kind of how you guys would use the nudge arrows if you have to.
So that's the red line is your design grade line.
Correct. Yep. And then you're allowed to move your final grade line or where your blade is actually going to cut to with your nudge arrows. In the middle of this page here, you guys probably don't have this button. Not a lot of guys have this turned on, but this is the flagging button. And I'm going to show you guys how to turn this on. If you go to settings, visual, flagging and logging, and you check mark this show manual flags button, you will then get this button that displays in the middle of your side profile. It's nice for guys to be able to use this to mark out objects or areas of interest that you need to potentially come back to in the future. So we give you an option to drop flags, and they will appear on your overhead map. So you'll actually see some flags dropping as you click these buttons. The next thing to the left here, we've got a cut mode button. We've got 3 different options. We have design, pass, and single. Design works in a stair-stepping type cutting motion where it'll only grab the top, 1, 2, or 3 lines available to you for cutting. Pass works a little bit differently where it actually, you can tell it what line you want it to cut to. So every one of these lines that you see here is numbered from the bottom up. P1 is final grade, P2 is the next line up, P3, P4, P5, P6, and so on. It only gives you the top 3 lines available to you. So if you selected pass, notice here I've got P3, P2, and P1, and your blade is only going to cut to that line that you tell it. If you're outside of an area like this, it will always cut to final grade. Like up in here on this slope here, it will be cutting to final grade. And then once you get here, it will move up to whatever line you have selected. I do have some videos showing you guys all this, so I'm not going to explain much more on that. And then also single. Notice when I click this, my lines disappeared. So now we're taking everything out in one cut. So this is, if you click on this, it's roughly half a foot of dirt. This is 6, so 0.5 is your design depth. That's how much dirt you need to take out in that area where you click. So 0.49. Just a little more info there on what's going on.
And that's where you could manually step on that just by doing the offsets. So the triangles on the left-hand side, the little triangles are the nudge it a little bit. The bigger part of the triangle is a secondary value to nudge it more.
Correct.
Large amount.
Yep. Left of that, we have the window button. This is a button that manipulates how you guys see your overhead, or I guess just your operation window in general. We've got 3D map. So because we have LiDAR or a LiDAR layer, we can view a 3D topography map of our ditch. So here you can see all of your ditch lines in a 3D view. Your cursor, the map will rotate around your cursor in this view. And if you're in the overhead, your cursor rotates on the map, or your vehicle cursor.
So if you do in this particular view with the 3D view, it's a heads-up display. So the display is always going to be whichever way you're facing is going to be towards the top. And then when you switch over to the overhead map, it's a north-up view. And so north is always going to be at the top of the map.
Correct. Yep. And the cool thing about this too is, so we loaded those flow depression lines. If you're in the 3D map view and you go to, well, in just demonstration, you go to settings, you can click on the elevation tab, and you can see those flow depression lines overlaid on top of your LiDAR elevation map. So you see how that kind of changes the way you view things. There's also an exaggeration bar. If you guys click here with your finger and slide this up and down, it will change the rate that the map is exaggerated. This will help you guys see those really small depressions if you guys are really trying to figure out where to put your dirt. Otherwise, a good indicator too is these red blobs. You can see how they overlay almost exactly in the depressions throughout your LiDAR map. I'm going to click back into the overhead map. The other 2 options in this window button are your back profile and your side profile. What we have displayed right now below is your side profile. If we were to click that button, it would disappear, and now we've got a large viewing window for your map. If you click side profile again, it's going to pop it back up. But also, if you click the back profile button, that's the other section. You hit this, it brings up your back sloping profile. And I will show you a video of what this looks like, just because I don't have GPS and a controller plugged in, we can't actually view what this looks like in office mode. You've got a slope ratio here, 1:4. This is setting the back slope, how steep those back slopes are in your ditches that you cut. And then just an on-off button. Again, I'll touch on this a little bit later with backsloping. So I'm going to get rid of that back profile window. And then on the left side, we kind of went over this. So this is not only a nudge button, but this center bar here will show you how far off target or on target your blade is controlling. So this button right here should remain green most of the time that you're cutting. When you guys, I mean, you get into some rougher terrain, your scraper could be bouncing up and down, or when you're shifting lines, like if you're in design mode, E×1, when your blade shifts from line one or one line up to the next, you'll see this indicator flash red or yellow. But this number right here that will appear when you're cutting is just the value, how far off grade you are from where you should be. So this is the main run screen of SD Drain. Bottom right corner, I'm going to have you guys, well, we're going to click on settings. I'm going to start and go through each one of these individually, and we'll cover what the different things mean and do in each menu. If you click on project, we've got new project, layers, and save load settings. New project is going to bring you back to that main window. So if you click on it, are you sure you want to start a new project? Hit yes. It'll bring you back to this window that we were at when we first started the program. I'm going to continue my old project that we were just in. And we'll get back to our main run screen. So if I go to settings again, project and layers, this is going to bring me back to my layers tab. So just in case I need to switch out a different layer, let's say I wanted to view my watersheds instead. So this is just a little bit different map. You can go back into your layers or go into project and go to layers and then change what maps you want to view. The next one over is save load settings. This is a window where you guys can actually save the different parameters that you initially have to measure for each vehicle. So just like any autonomous software, you need to put in some sort of parameters. Well, there's what we have machine settings and profile settings that you guys can save to each machine that you guys will be running. So whether it's a box blade or a rotary ditcher or a scraper, they're all going to have a couple different parameters that you're going to want to keep separate. And this just makes it a little bit easier to manage those and load them as you guys switch implements. So again, my main screen button brings me back to the main screen. I'm going to go back into settings. I'm going to go to GPS and then GPS control. Some of these tabs, I'm not going to go too into depth just because there's not a whole lot of information and you guys don't really need to be there. But GPS control is a good one for you guys to know. Most setups are going to be all wireless. If you buy a base package from us, most are going to be a wireless connection. This includes guys running external GPS. So if you've got a John Deere or Trimble GPS as an example, and you're running our wireless DAC 8000, your GPS will be set to wireless, and then you'll hit the start button. And then you should see GPS detected, and then you'll get some information down here as well. GPS data is the next tab over. Really, the only thing I want you guys to pay attention in here to is the fixed quality. When you guys are setting up the system or starting out for the day, this fixed quality has to be RTK fixed, or we will not let you guys scrape. The next one over is going to be satellites. Again, this is just showing a list of the satellites in view, and it does only show the GLONASS satellites, so you won't see Beidou or any of the other constellation. I think it shows GPS as well, GPS and GLONASS. GPS criteria, I'm going to skip that. You don't need to be in that page. Benchmarks is going to be the next one. I will go over this with a video just showing you how to use the map benchmark function. There are not a ton of benchmarks used in ditch. If you guys have some big projects and some major dirt work that needs to be done, then it might be beneficial for you guys to create some benchmarks. Typically, guys are out in fields, they're cutting ditches. Um, it's hard to place a permanent benchmark in a field. But I will show you guys the one that you might end up using is the map feature, and we'll go over this a little bit later.
Yeah, and I mean, just briefly, the map feature is going to be an offset. So, I mean, like if you're running RTK and you're doing steering and you come up to a row and you're supposed to be right on the row and you're not, you hit the offset button. That's what the map button is going to do. The GPS button is going to be recall to that exact same point where your base is. But like Luke said, we'll go over that in a little bit.
Yeah, correct. Yep, that's a good explanation. So the next tab we have down here is going to be DAC. This is going to deal with your controller, so that DAC 8000 that's in the cab with you. If you go to DAC control, it looks a lot like GPS control did. Again, base kits that guys purchase, you'll be running wireless. And if it's for some reason set to serial, it's going to be a special case where we need to switch you over to serial. But most guys will be set up as wireless. DAC data. This is a page that will display the slope sensor information. So I haven't gone over it yet, but there is a slope sensor or a pitch sensor that we can mount on your scraper, box blade, rotary ditcher. And for some applications, if you've got a tilt controllable cylinder on your implement, we can control it to either hold that blade at a certain angle or keep it flat in the ditch bottom. So again, this page just shows you the data coming in off of that slope sensor. DAC settings. This is going to be your setup page if you guys do get into those slope sensors. So you'll just go in here and you have to check mark a couple of boxes. Again, we will help you guys with your setup with some instructions, or sometimes we just log in to help you get them set up. But you'll just check these on for which applies to you guys for the different pieces of equipment that you guys run. So not a whole lot in here for you guys to change. And then DAC config. This is the setup page. I can't do anything in here. It'll let me go to it, but there's nothing that I can do in this page to show you guys what to do for tuning, since I don't have a controller plug. The next one down below is going to be visual, and it's going to be graph. So again, the visual tab is going to be for guys who want to change the way that things are viewed. So if you want to switch colors around on how your fill color is displayed or your cut area, you guys can click on the specific description up above. So my cut area, if I wanted to change that, you can do that as well. I'm just going to click out of there. GPS indicator, you guys can display or change how that looks on your side profile. Line width and stuff like that, you guys can change the way that everything is displayed. A lot of times guys will just run the default and be happy, but we do give you some customization as well. So this graph legend button here, we have hidden, full size, or minimal size. And if you look down here, this is an example of what it might look like. So minimal size is going to be just your cut, fill, and the length, and then your minimum slope. The full size is going to be a little more information telling you on what each line represents. So your design grade line, again, that was that red line that SD-Ring gives you as a best fit line. And then you've got your grade line, which is the one that you guys can toggle or nudge up and down. So I usually like the minimal size. It kind of gives you a bigger view of your side profile, and then you still get your cut and fill information. Next, we have indicator bar. I'm just going to say right away, don't change anything in here with the numbers. They're set up pretty well that help you guys ditch effectively. Colorblind friendly option. If you guys need need this turned on, what happens is this will, you check this on, this indicator here that's normally red, green, and yellow will just turn into shades of gray. That way you guys can see those a little bit better.
That's the vertical bar for depth. And then when you click on the other one, that's the horizontal indicator bar, like a light bar, for guidance. And that's the top light bar on that main working screen.
Yes, the light bar he's talking about is this top one right here. This is a guidance light bar.
Like Luke said, you don't need to mess with those settings.
Yep, just stay out of there. Next, we've got map. Again, it's all about how you want things to be displayed. So your GPS indicator, you can change the color on that. Tap on this, select it from the color wheel. So now it's red. Outline, stuff like that. You can make that thicker or thinner. 3D size, again, that all pertains to your GPS symbol. So this is what your tractor or your scraper symbol looks like driving when you're in the field. Survey lines, again, how your survey looks. Yeah, so again, defaults work great. Sometimes guys will come in here and change your indicator just because all of our background images, they're multicolored, and it's sometimes easier to see different symbol or different colors, up against, you're not going to want a green indicator, GPS symbol on a green background image. It's going to be a little bit harder to see, so you might change that to like red. Does that make sense, Scott?
Yeah, it totally does. And I'm with you. It's the implement.
Yep.
It's this is where the GPS is. So it's the GPS on the implement. So it's actually the implement that's moving around. Your tractor would be in front of it pulling it.
It'd be kind of nice to see that, wouldn't it, on your overhead?
Yeah.
So that's going to be the visual, and then go to map. The next one over is units for guys wanting to view different bits of data differently, I guess. You guys can select what you want to see here. So feet per second, meters per second, show altitude in meters. We usually typically leave it to defaults as well here in the US. Flagging and logging. We kind of went through this a little bit. Again, this is your flagging button. You guys can actually click on these and change what they're labeled as. So rock, gold, and dead body. Nice.
We're joking.
Yeah. So yeah, it is something that you guys can switch around. Check this on and off, and it'll either show or hide that flag button that we talked about earlier in the slide. Enable visual logging. This is a tool you guys can use to record data throughout a field. So let's say the example I like to give is guys will get these maps made and they'll look great. They'll work great for what they're doing. But sometimes guys will make a ton of changes to their field. Like they will do some major dirt overhaul work, and they'll want to get a new map made or just this kind of an updated map made. Well, what you can do is you can enable this visual logging tool, and then every time that you guys drive throughout the field, it will be recording your GPS data. So you'll want RTK, and you'll want to do it probably, I would say, in like 30-40 foot spacing throughout the whole field. Just drive that whole field, and then also drive the ditch bottom. You want to get that. That's probably the most important information. And then what you can do is export. That'll be something we touch on here in a little bit. You can export that GPS log, and it does spit out shape files. So if you know how to make those maps yourself with shape files, great. But if not, you can get them to us, and we can get you some updated maps.
I mean, it would also be awesome to drive like the apex of your ditches too. So your ditch banks, if you're doing that, and then bring it into another planning software.
Yes. Yep. That is the flagging and logging button. So down below, we're going to go to Program Next, and we're going to go to Profile. These are going to be all of your ditch creation settings, if you want to call them that. So we got min grade. This is going to be the minimum amount of slope that's applied to all of your ditches that you survey. And same thing with the maximum grade. It's just the maximum grade allowed in each survey. If you guys know, some guys like to set this up and be pretty precise based off of their soil types. But if you know the flow rate of your soil types, you guys can put a max grade in, and then what will happen is SD drain will not allow a maximum grade that's higher than what your soil allows for flow without washing out. So then it'll build a ditch between your min grade and max grade, and you will know for sure that you should minimize the amount of washout that you have. Obviously, if you get 4 inches of rain in an afternoon, it's probably not going to be good. So just some ways, there's some tools that you guys, there's some ways that you guys can set these settings up to work more in your favor. Defaults work pretty dang well. We've got some good defaults in. So if you're ever worried, there is a reset button on most pages in the program. If you click on this, we'll set you back to some defaults that we know in like generally work. Pass depth is the next thing that we'll talk about. You guys remember those pass lines that we were talking about? So the darker lines that we saw in the green on our side profile, well, that is what's called a pass depth or pass line, I guess. And that represents whatever value you have in here. So this is a 2-inch, so it'd be 2-inch pass cuts.
Some guys will talk about that as like a sweet spot of their scraper. So what kind of a cut can you do with your scraper where it loads super nice? That would be like ideal as to what you're going to put in for that number. So it's and that is determined on conditions, soil type, what the day is like. But anyway, that's an option for you to change. The standard that we have is set for 2 inches.
Yeah, so when I see guys switching this number, it's mostly on if they've got a scraper with a really wide blade, so like a 12-foot or a 15-foot blade, they might change this pass depth to 1 inch. And then when you go back into your design, so this D design times 1 times 2 or 3, well, this is just a multiplier based off of that pass depth. So it'd be 1 inch times 1, so 1 inch, 2 inches, and 3 inches of dirt. So
like grab one of those lines. But I don't remember. Like that top line or something.
Yep. So there's one.
So you see now in the right hand side where Luke's showing right there, those are your different pass depths. Then if you change that value, those lines will change.
Yep. So there it's set to 2 inches. If I switch this to, we'll just do 1 inch. Go back here.
It should be twice as many.
We'll have twice as many lines. Yep, for cutting.
Okay.
All right, the next thing I'm going to mention is a DGL offset. So what this is an extra amount of dirt that you're going to scrape out of the ditch, even if it's cut to grade already. So what happens is when guys clean out, so they've got all these ditches established, and what happens is they're going to want to go and clean these ditches out. Well, we have what's called a DGL offset that you guys can set to a certain value. So in this case, it's set to a 1/2 inch. And when you guys start cutting on this already to grade ditch, it's still going to take out a 1/2 inch of dirt. And all it does, you can set this to 0 if you want, or up to, I think it's, -2 to 2 inches. So you can set this to 0 if you want, and then it will not take out any extra dirt. But if you want to drag just a little bit out, and just, I think it helps create a nicer path for water to flow. Just taking out a little bit of extra dirt. So it's up to you guys on what you do with this DGL offset. Some guys set 0, some leave it at 1/2 inch. It's totally up to you guys. And then large nudge and small nudge. Scott was talking about those triangles on the left side of your screen. So the large shape or the polygon is going to be in this case, a 1 inch cut, and the small nudge is going to be a 2/10 increment. So
right, you can the smaller triangle that's closer to the grade line.
Correct. Yep. It's just a smaller value that you guys, and you can set these to whatever you want. So I like to change this to a 1/2 inch. A lot of the times I see guys, 1/2 inch is usually a good amount for the small nudge, and then a 1 inch for the large. Cut beyond profile, that's the next setting here. What this does is it'll extend a line past or before and after your survey. So when you hit start survey and stop survey at those 2 points, it automatically extends a line before and after, which it helps you guys survey, or when you guys survey up to culverts, you can't quite get the scraper, where your surveying equipment is, all the way up to your culvert. So what we do is we just shoot an imaginary line 100 feet before and after at a minimum grade. And that way you guys can, let's say you survey up to a culvert, you don't get quite as close as you want, you can turn around, back your scraper to the culvert, and we're still going to give you some sort of guidance to make sure that water flows from the end of the survey or the beginning past. Hopefully that makes some sense there with the cut beyond profile. Survey both directions. Again, this allows you guys to survey from the outlet or to the outlet. Again, you guys make the decision. We're not going to tell you which way your water flows, just because it's a lot. You guys are out there surveying. You can see what's happening in the field. We're going to leave that up to you. If you do check this off, you always have to survey from the top of the ditch to the bottom. The reason we added this is because some guys, they'll be surveying these mile and a half long ditches. Well, let's say they get to the end, hit stop survey, and don't like the way the ditch or that survey turned out. Now you have to drive all the way back to the other end of the ditch and then resurvey. So instead, what you can do is just turn right around and now survey in the opposite direction to hopefully save you guys some time from driving and resurveying. Laser level, this is a function that it works. So it works just like a laser, but you can also drive in whatever pattern you want. So if you want to put a laser grade on this really curvy ditch, go ahead and turn laser mode on, and you're gonna set you'll set a grade, and then just go ahead and do your survey. You do not have to go in straight lines. You can drive in circles if you wanted to, or in an S shape, and it will put a lasered grade on that ditch. I'm going to check that off for now. So the next tab is going to be machine. This is your initial setup. So when you guys are starting up, let's say you've got a new package or you got a new machine, you'll always have to go into your machine settings to type in measurements. So if you click on the verbiage, you're going to get a description of what we want you guys to measure. So blade to ground, this is the only one that we will help you guys do autonomously by clicking this calculator right here. So calculator, like calculating the blade to ground. If you tap on that, there's going to be a wizard that pops up telling you exactly what to do. So it'll be put the blade on the ground, hit OK, and raise the blade up, hit OK. You do have to have RTK GPS coming in because that's where we get, that's how we calculate that blade to ground, just measuring the differences in those heights.
Most guys do that on like level ground, like in the yard with RTK GPS.
Yeah, yep. A lot of guys in their initial setup, they'll do it in the yard. I have had good luck in teaching guys. If you want to do it in the field, you definitely can. What you would do is you would drive to a relatively flat spot in the field, and what I always tell guys to do is drive forward and then look at the bottom of your tread marks, and that's kind of the same thing as if it were like a flat pad. You can just use the tread marks as that reference. GPS height, it's all pretty self-explanatory. So GPS height, fore, aft, left and right. Make sure you guys get these measurements in as well. And then blade width is going to be important too, so we know where the edge of your scraper is. Next, we have ditch. We've got ditch width, backslope width, backslope ditch width, and then backslope grade. These are going to be your main settings dealing with ditching and backsloping, just kind of setting up your parameters, and you're telling the system how wide you want each portion of that ditch to be. So don't get confused why there's ditch width and backslope ditch width. The reason that there's two separate settings is that when you're working with backslope, you usually like your ditch width to be a little bit narrower versus if you're just doing ditch, like the ditch bottom. So ditch width is the ditch bottom. When backsloping is on, it's you're using these two settings. And when backsloping is off, it's just using your ditch width. And I'll show you guys, or try to explain that here later when we watch a little video. But yeah, set these up how you guys want to, how wide you want to cut your ditches. Typically, ditch width, I'll set it, 2 to 4 feet wider than your cutting blade. That way you've got a little wiggle room, because what happens is when you go out of range of this parameter, it'll stop cutting. It'll say out of range. That auto enable button will be yellow. It'll say out of range, and your blade won't be doing anything. So I always like to set them a little bit wider.
So if I had an 8-foot blade, I would set my ditch width to,
Yep, 10 or 12 feet. And that'll give you a little bit of wiggle room left and right.
and then we'll go over where it says backslope survey off and backslope mirroring off and parabolic ditch. We'll go through that one.
Correct. Yep. We're gonna go through those with a video. It's a lot easier to explain through the videos we have. Program and then support. This is the support page that we have. We've got a QR code that you guys can scan. It brings you to the manuals. It brings you to sddrain.com. This same website right here. So it'll bring you to that page, and then you guys can click through. If there's a cheat sheet guide that you need to look at, or some sort of diagram that we've got on there that'll help you out, go scan this and go to the website for quick help there. It also gives you registration status and stuff like that. So yeah, this is the support page. Check for updates is in here. When you guys connect your computer to a hotspot or an internet access point, you can go to this page and click check for updates, and then it will bring your system to the most current released software that we have available. The other one is the online help. So again, it uses internet. Click on this online help button, and then it will give you an ID and a password that you will give to us when you guys call in. And then that's how we can log in. We talked earlier about the remote support that we provide. Again, this is how you do it. Click on online help, make sure your computer is connected to Wi-Fi, and then yeah, we can log into your screen if need. Export button, we've got two different options. We've got project and GPS log. I'm just going to go here and kind of pop this up. So project, what's going to happen if you select project, it's going to export all of these ditch lines on your overhead map, and it will be the raw data. So let's just say you've got, for some reason, you need to give all of your cut data to, I don't know, or you just need the raw data for some reason. You can export a project. It'll give you a whole list of different things that we've recorded as you guys have been cutting. The other one in exports is the GPS log. Remember that visual logging tool that we showed you in the visual tab? Well, this is how you export that data. If you click on this, it's going to spit out a shapefile that contains all of your survey data that you had collected using the visual logging tool. Elevation. This button right here is going to allow you to switch back and forth between your elevation map and your background map. Notice you've got background displayed now, and now I have elevation displayed. If you don't have maps, this button will display, it'll just say NA or not applicable, and it just won't do anything. This button is also the settings button when you guys are ditching. So when you guys are ditching and the screen or the cutting is turned on, we don't allow you to change settings, or we don't want you to change kind of those main settings. So this settings button will turn into this elevation or map flip button, whatever you want to call it. Min close, this is going to be the shutdown process that you guys should be using when you guys are done for the day. If you click on it, you'll click shutdown, and it's going to shut down not only the computer, or not only SD Drain, but the computer as well. If you click close, it's going to only shut down SD Drain. And if you hit minimize, it's going to minimize the program and not shut it off. So that's basically the program in a nutshell. I mean, that's all the buttons that you guys will need to know what they do, how they do it, how they affect your ditching. I'm going to go back into the slideshow now, and we'll just go back through some of these. It's gonna there might be a little bit of overlap, so I might just cut briefly through some of the slides because we've covered pretty much everything in the program. So starting the program, grower farm field, and then selecting your new project. Interface, this is maybe something we didn't talk about. These tabs here, or these buttons on your interface, are editable. If you long press with your finger, which essentially is a right click on a mouse, you'll get this window that pops up, and you guys can display whatever data you want to see. So cut depth, nudge depth. I mean, the main ones that I like speed up there, and then fixed quality. Make one of those tabs fixed quality, or diff age, stuff like that. It's up to you what you guys want displayed. Survey buttons, we hit these, or we at least did the start survey and stop survey button. We didn't talk about the pause survey or the resume. These are used for guys if you want to, let's say you're doing a road ditch, and there's a culvert in your way that connects, the second half of the ditch. Well, let's say you survey up to the culvert. What you can do is hit pause survey on the one side, then drive your scraper, park it in the ditch, and then hit resume. And what's going to happen is it'll continue that survey from where you hit pause survey and resume survey. It just draws pretty much a line between the 2 points, and then now you can create that ditch to flow through your culverts without ripping the culvert up. Then survey both directions. This is what it'll look like when you click start survey. It's going to ask you, are you going to the outlet or from the outlet? And notice here in our profile settings, this function is check marked on. Editing survey ditches, we went through that. Again, that edit window or edit button in the bottom right corner of your side profile. Auto buttons, so we've got auto disable and auto enable. Again, we talked about those and a little bit about the out of range, but this is what the buttons look like when they're actually functioning. So red is off, green is on, and yellow is your out of range of those ditch parameters that you had set up. Side profile. Again, we've looked at this a little bit, kind of showing you guys just what some different indicators on this are. You got your legend on the bottom. Here, this is the full size legend. We've got elevation data here on the left, design grade line, final grade line, and then pass lines as well. Remember, all of the green will get removed when you guys are ditching. Different cutting modes. I will go through these again with a video, but we do have design, pass, and single as options for you guys. Ditch cut settings. Again, this is your profile / slope settings. Pass depth. These are kind of the main ones that I want you guys to be aware of as to how much your scraper is taking out every time you make a pass, and then your DGL offset as well. All right, design cut. This is going to be a video, and it's going to show you guys how design cut works. So I've already surveyed. I got my side profile up, and I'm in D×1, or design ×1. So as I'm driving or coming back to cut this ditch, my blade is going to hover and only cut the topmost available line there is. So D×1 is going to take out one line every time you make a pass over this ditch. The cool thing is that you guys can switch between D×1, D×2, D×3 whenever you want. You don't have to stop cutting and switch to a different mode. You can just do it on the fly as you're going. So what happens here is I turn around. I'm going to zoom ahead here because I do end up turning around. So I'm in D×2 right now. I did switch it. I'm going to come back. Here's my blade indicator. And then my next pass, D×2, is going to take the next two available lines that there are. So just to talk about indications, here's that indicator bar on the left side here. Now that we're cutting, it should maintain green pretty well. But you guys did see those yellow and red flashes when it was jumping up between the different grade lines. So there, I might have hit a pothole or something and my blade dropped pretty quick. But yeah, now it's dropping down to take out the next two lines. That is design cut. Next, we're going to talk about pass cut. So we'll get this started again. We've got a survey, and I have pass 3 selected. So you click on pass and then select the top or whatever pass you want to cut to. So I'm on pass 3. Pass 1 is final grade line. Pass 2 is the next one up. And then I'm, as you can see, on pass 3. I'm cutting pass 3. And when you clear out a pass line, it's going to switch and give you the next 3 available lines. So if you had 5, 4, 3, you'd get like 3, 2, 1 if you took out pass 4. And then notice here, whenever you're past the area, it only ever cuts to final grade. It's not going to take out any more or less. Single cut. Pretty self-explanatory. It's taking a single cut to remove all of the dirt. So in this area, I've got a nice, this is probably a 2-inch cut right here. But when we get over to this, this is probably 8 inches of dirt, I would say. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to nudge my grade line up. So as I hit my nudge arrows, you'll see my grade line rise on the bottom. And essentially, this is going to limit the amount of dirt that your scraper is going to take out. So here we go. Our blade is just moving wherever we nudge our grade line to.
And you can see how far you are off the grade line in the upper left-hand corner, where that you're 4 inches above grade at the moment.
Yeah, and that's helpful too. So now let's say we're done with this pass, and now we want to come back and make the next pass. Well, we have to nudge, 1 inch, 2 inch, however far down to take more dirt out as we come back the other direction. So that is single cut. Now we're going to get into backsloping a little bit. This is what your backslope window looks like when it is turned on and you've got all your controller, GPS, and stuff. Everything's plugged in. This is what it will look like. And then here's just an overhead shot of what it looks like in the overhead map. And then just some real life indicators of what your backslope is actually talking about. So cutting backslope, one thing that is already done, I've already performed my survey, and now I'm actually just going to start cutting in my backslope area. So here you can see my cursor is driving in the backslope area. And in the bottom right window here, I've got my blade indicator. I have a indicate only slope sensor on or unlock in this video. So notice it's just displaying the tilt at what the blade is at. We do have a controllable unlock as well, but in this video, it is only an indicate only system. Notice my blade moving up and down as I drive throughout the ditch or my backslope area. And I do have it set to a 1:40 backslope ratio. This is a rise over run ratio, so 1 foot rise over 40 feet of run. And then I do have an on-off button here below. Typically, when guys are setting up their slope ratio, it's kind of up to you to set. We can help you out in determining what a good slope ratio is. I've found that if you're in more hilly country, you got rolling hills in between you got ditches in between your rolling hills. A good slope ratio is probably, and this is just a guess, anywhere from like 1 to 15 to 1 to 25. You get a lot steeper back slopes when you get into the rolling hills, and then more so in the flat ground. I would say a 1 to 50 and then up to like a 1 to 70 is probably pretty common for what I see with our customers.
I mean, and if you're looking for an idea of what the value would be, you could always go to the apex of the ditch. So you can see on the top where your GPS is with a triangle, right? That's where your implement is. If you're to move that implement to the line on the top there, that's going to be where the apex is. And then the top box, the white box is going to show you what your slope is currently. And you could sure use that number or drive to a couple different spots and manually enter a number that's close to that. So that gives you a good idea of what that slope value could be if you're just like, I have no ideas.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Yep. We have another function. So that is a static. What we just talked about was a static back slope. So that number doesn't change. It's a 1:40 ratio throughout the whole ditch. The next portion is a surveyed back slope. So a dynamic or changing back slope ratio. And what we do here is we actually note again, I've already surveyed my ditch bottom. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to loop out and I'm going to hit start survey again. And I am going to choose a back slope instead of a new ditch. You do have to turn this feature on. Remember, in your ditch settings, you have to check mark that red X, make it a green check mark or turn it on. And then you'll get the option to select. So I hit start survey and now I've got back slope and new ditch to choose from. And I'm going to select back slope. And then I'm going to survey the outer apex, like what Scott was talking about, the apex of where you want your back slope to finish out at. So this is where you want it to daylight or stop cutting. So again, I'm going to survey this, and you can survey wherever you want. So if you need to weave in and out alongside this ditch, go ahead and do that. Sort of just like how I am here in the demonstration. So
because visually you're going to be able to see like where the apex or like the bank of the ditch is.
Yeah, yep. You'll be able to tell most likely when you're actually sitting in the field where a nice spot to blend it would be. Get to the end, hit stop survey, and I'm actually going to survey the other side as well. I'll kind of fast forward here a little bit. Just as I'll get to the other side, I'm going to hit start survey and then select back slope again. So start survey, back slope, and now I'm going to continue driving the opposite side back slope. And what's happening is instead of this number being just set to 1 to 35, is actually taking a reading at every single point here and it automatically determining what that slope ratio needs to be based off of your survey elevations.
Yeah, because when we were talking about earlier, driving to that spot and the white square part is going to show you where it is, and that's like where the value should be. Now, what you're doing is you're saving all those spots, and then dynamically the program is going to change to where all those spots are, and switch with the back slopes.
Yeah, yep. So now you can see here we're auto enabled and we've turned control on. It says out of range. We're actually not within our ditch yet. So I'm gonna start driving here to our back slope area. You can see my blade indicator right here. And this screen is a forward facing display. So as we are driving forward right now in the ditch, notice it's displaying the wide section of the back slope here on the right, while we're also in the right side or the right back slope on the overhead map. If you were to quick turn around, this screen down here would flip flop and you'd get this wide section on the left and short on the right.
And again, on this, Luke has an indicate only slope sensor that's
This one's a controller. Yep.
on his machine that he's using, and that's why the black indicator in that window is at an angle. If you don't have a slope sensor, that black indicator is just going to be parallel to the ground.
Correct. Yep. You won't have this tilted blade indication. But you guys can see how it's always changing. These back slopes are going up and down the whole time. Yeah. So let's just say you guys screwed up a survey, like you were surveying a back slope and you screwed it up. All you have to do is turn right around and go right back down the same path. Just hit start survey again, and it's going to ask you, are you doing a back slope or a new ditch? And it will automatically replace the corresponding side with your new survey that you perform. Surveyed back slope with mirroring. This allows you guys to simply survey one side of the ditch and then reflect that survey to the opposite side. There's maybe not a whole ton of instances where this is going to happen, but we at least give you the option if you want to make both sides of that ditch the same, it will mirror your survey to the opposite side. So again, same thing. At the end, I hit start survey, selected back slope. And again, this is a feature you do have to check mark on. It's back slope mirroring. I get to the end, hit stop survey. And now you can see I have a reflected ditch line here on the opposite side. Next, we'll talk about some parabolic ditches. So this is another feature that you would turn on. If you guys need to cut out parabolic ditches, for instance, like waterways and stuff like that, you guys can turn this on. So parabolic ditches right here. And then what you'll do is you'll set your depth at half back slope width. And that is a percentage. So on the right side, we have an example right here. So if my value is set to 0.75 at half width of the back slope, it's going to be, so if this is 1 foot deep here, it's going to be 75% of that at your half back slope width, which is 9 inches. So 1 foot in your ditch bottom depth, it'll be 9 inches deep, halfway out of whatever you set your widths to. So that would be the ditch width that you guys would be changing. I'm sorry, it'd be your back slope width and back slope ditch width. Okay, now we're going to talk about parabolic ditches. So here I'm setting up the settings I need for parabolic. I'll check mark that on. I'm going to leave my half back slope width at 0.75. I think that's pretty typical when the math checks out when they give you your plan. But I'm going to survey this waterway, and then what's going to happen is I'm going to just work it one station at a time. So here I'm dropping a flag. I'm just marking out the ends of my stations. I'm going to keep doing that throughout my whole ditch. And a lot of the times they'll give you a footage on each station so you know how long they are. And then the way that I would do it is I would just survey each individual station. So in this example, I'm surveying all of them at once. But what I would do, and I think it makes it a lot easier, is just survey each individual station. That way it keeps them all separate, and then you just cut on each line individually. I'm going to zoom forward here a little bit so you can see here. I'm going to hopefully zoom out here, turn around. And I'm actually going to cut this first station. So I will change my grade. So they'll give you a percent that they want for each station, and you need to cut them to it accordingly. So I'm going to, this is why I say survey each station individually, because I'm actually having to manipulate my side profile. I'll nudge up a bunch here, set my slope or my grade, and then I will start cutting those stations individually. So I went to the edit window, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my min grade so it's set to a 0.2. Here I'm going to increase or decrease this. And then I will nudge up, and now I'm going to cut this first station right here to grade, and then I will keep working it up and down. Here, I'll nudge up again. There we go. I'm nudged up. So 14 inches nudged up is where I want to be for that first station. I'll start cutting. And then once I get to this next station, I will adjust my settings accordingly. So I'll go back. I'll change my min grade in the edit window to whatever it needs to be. And then I will nudge up and down to those stations. Again, it's going to be a lot easier if you guys just survey out each individual station as you guys work this waterway. But there's many ways to do things. So this is just one way that I have demonstrating in the overhead. I'm going to cut ahead here. We're going to get to where we display actual parabolic ditching. Now it's turned on. And now you can see this is what that window looks like as you guys are actually cutting. I do have a controllable pitch on this setup. So as I'm going to turn around here. So I'm going outside of my ditch parameters. I'm going to turn around, and then I'm going to get right back inside this parabolic ditch that I'm going to create.
Oh, so you can control the slope of the blade.
Correct. Yep. So watch here when we get back in range. It's going to raise my blade up a little bit. So we're going up, and you can see my blade is tilting according to how it needs to be positioned in that section of the parabola. So that's the basics of parabolic ditching. There's not a whole lot. I mean, now you're just making passes back and forth when you're cutting out these parabolic portions in the ditch.
I'm going to throw this out there as like for a slope sensor on a ditcher, or on a, is that if you have an indicate only slope sensor, um, that's going to determine like the depth of the blade, like where it determines the depth. If you don't have, like 95% of the guys are not going to have this. The blade depth is calculated from the center of the blade, um, whether it's, flat, or if you're on a side slope or something like that. If you do have an indicate only slope sensor attached to the system, then the depth of the blade is going to be taken from the sides of the blade. So if the right-hand side is further down in the ground than the left-hand side of the blade, it's going to move, it's going to take the measurement from the side of the blade that's furthest down in the ground, or toward the ground, rather than just the center of the blade, just as an FYI.
Correct. Yep. That is 100% correct. Slope sensor benefits, cross slope control on, like what we just talked about. Yeah, Scott. Tilt boxes on blades, rotary ditchers, helps eliminate gouging. So sometimes when your scraper is rocking and you're trying to cut, well, like what Scott said, when that right side dips down, we don't know that unless you're actually running a slope sensor. So, so without a slope sensor, like what Scott said, we're measuring off of just the center of the blade, where your GPS goes up and down. But with a slope sensor, we'll actually see your blade tilt in that side profile window. So next we'll talk about building a level pad. So when you guys are wanting to, let's say, clear out a new area for a bin site, or some guys have used it for a shop pad or a concrete pad in front of the shop, we've been able to change some of these settings and let you guys level out a large area for those projects. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go into settings, then go up to program, the blue button, and then go to ditch. You're going to want to change your ditch width. So you got to kind of think about your project. So if your project is going to be 100 feet wide, you're probably going to want to make your ditch width, we'll just say 200 feet wide or 150 feet. And all this does is give you wiggle room in case you need to go a little bit further than what you initially thought. So just change your ditch width to X amount of feet wider than your project. And the next step that you're going to want to do is go into program and profile and check mark the laser level on. This is going to switch it so you don't get a min and a max grade. All you get is a fixed grade to set. So you can see there up on top, we've got a fixed grade here. And right now I have it set to 0. And then what you're going to do, go ahead and go survey that run or that area where you want to make flat. I always tell guys, run right down the center of it. That way you've got the most working width on each side of that survey. So that's for smaller projects. So then you're done. Go do your survey, set up your grade that you want on that slope. If you want it to 0, set it to 0, and so on. If you want to go wider than 500 feet, we do have an option where you can actually switch these ditch settings to 500 feet. You can get up to, I'll explain this a little bit later, but you can get up to 1,500 feet of working width for that project. So The way that you would do that is change your back slope width to 500 and your back slope ditch width to 500 as well. So think about it this way. You've got a 500-foot ditch bottom, and then you've got 500 feet on each side of that that you can make perfectly flat. That would be like your back slope area.
I'm assuming you'd have to change your back slope grade then to 0.
Correct. Yep. So then what we did is we told the math doesn't, work out, but a 1 to 0 back slope is going to be perfectly flat. So that will give you 1,500 feet of a perfectly flat width or working width, I suppose.
So what number do you put in there?
I put 0.
Okay.
Yep. Put a 0 into this back slope grade setting, and that will give you a 1 foot to 0 feet ratio, which doesn't make sense, but we just programmed it that way to make it flat.
And that's if it's more than 500 feet.
Correct. If you're just working under 500 feet, just change your ditch width to 500, and you're going to have enough working width to make that area flat.
You can go however long.
Yep.
Like 500 feet wide.
Yep, 500 feet wide. You can survey as long as you want. So if you want to make a half-mile wide flat area, feel free to do so. But yeah, you can do whatever you want lengthwise. Save load settings, again, like I talked about before. I'm mostly going to kind of skip through these. Yes, they're in the slides. You guys can download these. But we did talk about this stuff previously when we went through the program. So project save load settings, again, is just your area where you can have a bunch of different machines. Say you've got a box blade, a scraper, and a rotary ditcher. Save all your parameters in here and easily load them the next time when you guys switch. GPS menu. This is actually an example of what it will look like when GPS is detected. You can see I've got wireless selected over here, and then I've got, good. Everything is connected, working how it should. I've got GPS detected in the top middle. So yeah, this is what your wireless page should look like if you're running a standard SD drain package.
So if you have your own GPS, like a John Deere GPS or a Trimble or whatever else that you have, where you would have a base and a rover, and the rover is mostly on the implement.
Yep. Yeah, and I actually just noticed something. I have a number that's wrong in here. So over here on the left side, I've got port 8703. It should be 8704 here. So that they're contradicting, but it should be 8704. And you won't type that in. This is all defaulted in when you select wireless. So don't even worry about it. GPS data to show you guys.
Back up again. So if guys are running the PX5 Rover and base, that's actually going to be a serial connection, right?
So yes, yep. So for guys running the PX5R, this is that GPS that mounts to the back of your tablets. If you're running those systems, this will be set to serial, and it will be COM port 2 and baud rate 57600. This will all look the same, but it will be selected serial, COM 2, baud rate 57600.
But most guys are going to have their GPS where you're just going to plug it into the DAC in the and throw it like behind the seat in the cab.
Correct. Yep. Most guys will be that way. GPS data. This page gives you information on the data coming from your receiver that is on the scraper. Fixed quality is kind of the main thing we look for here. If you don't have RTK, it's not going to work. So RTK fix on the bottom there in the red square. That's the main thing you want to look for. Usually if that's good, everything else is going to be good. SD Drain is going to give us warnings on things that are not. So if you do have high HDOP, VDOP, and PDOP, those are all your delusion of precision. So it's really how well your satellites are spaced in the sky. And with these new receivers, especially the PX5R, you get really accurate or really good dispersion of satellites since we use so many constellations in our signal. Low diff age, again, that usually hovers around 2 seconds. Your diff age is up here. Again, that's usually around 2 seconds.
Remember, we're talking base in the field.
Yep.
So for guys who are running like when you were talking about, we have heard from some John Deere dealers that they've run into guys who have got a 7,000 or 7,500 and they don't have a radio in it. Then they'll never get that fixed if they're using the satellite RTK. So you need a base in the field and a radio. So your receiver on in your tractor or on your scraper is talking to another GPS setup that's in the field.
Correct. Yep. And if you're having distance issues, one thing to start to look at is the diff age. The further you get away from your tower, or even if you go behind a really thick tree line or something like that, that can cause issues with your diff age and then affect your GPS quality. So if you're having range issues, I would look at your diff age and kind of the position you are and what's in between you and your base station. You always want to have or try to have at least somewhat line of sight visual to your base station. They do have pretty good range and can go through certain materials pretty well. But for the most part, you want to try to maintain line of sight, even with your towers. I mean, this would be like your John Deere towers that your dealers might still have. So GPS data, again, just look for RTK fix. You should be good to go. Benchmarks. Earlier, we talked about the map benchmark versus the GPS benchmark. Typically, we see guys using the map benchmark, if anything, and even that's a rare occasion just because maps are usually created and everything is geo-referenced really well. Like all of your ditch lines will line up to where you're actually sitting in the field and everything jives like it should. But in the case where your tractor on your overhead map, so let's say, like, I actually have a video here. We'll just kind of go through it here. So my tractor is actually sitting in this crossing right here. I'm sitting in the ditch, but my cursor is over here almost in the yard. So what we're going to do is we are going to use that map benchmark to correct that. So go to GPS, benchmarks, and then you'll pull up the screens and then go to map. And my screen recorder didn't record this, but there's actually some wizards prompting me to do things. And here it's telling me to actually put an X at the location I'm at. So I tap on the screen where I'm actually sitting on the map physically. So in the real world, you're sitting in this crossing. I'm going to hit start to correct. And now what it's going to do is going to collect some data points and it's going to move my cursor from the wrong location down to the correct location. And now essentially my maps have been shifted and I'm ready to go and start cutting and using my maps to guide myself or to guide what to do with the dirt.
So map is going to correct your X and Y coordinates. If you were to use the GPS button, that's going to fix your X, Y, and Z coordinates.
Yeah, yep, that is correct. So we don't see GPS used a whole lot in ditch just because guys are in and out of the field so quickly, and it's a lot easier just to resurvey, versus line up your scraper to your benchmark year in and year out.
Yep.
If you've got a good way to do it and you want to try and use this, feel free. You need to create a permanent benchmark in your field somewhere that does not move when you guys do tillage, when you plant, combine, whatever. So if you can get that accurate, go ahead. You could use the GPS benchmark. And what that allows you to do is not have to resurvey those ditches, but just a warning, it's really hard to get a scraper back in the same spot each year.
A lot less headache if you're just like surveying and then doing your ditch right away.
Yep. So we always tell guys just go out and resurvey the ditches. I mean, it's one, you're making a bunch of passes up and down this thing anyways. What's one more pass? DAC control, I've got two different options here. So on the left side, we have the hardwired version, and this is just to show you guys what it looks like. So serial is selected, and I've got COM9. Again, COM9 is some of the really old equipment, the DAC minis, but you guys, most of the guys that are watching won't have those anymore. The new stuff is all wireless, so you've got wireless selected here, and then the same thing, just like GPS control, you've got an IP address and a port. So IP, and that'll all pre-populate. Don't worry about it. You will not have to type those in. DAC data, again, we went through that a little bit, showing you the slope data that pops up on the screen when you have this sensor hooked up. You got your pitch and roll messages, P, and then the number, that is your pitch. So we're minus 10 degrees right here. R is roll, so we're tilted to the left, 0.4 degrees. So you can kind of see there, and then we have rotation, X, Y, and Z rotation and stuff like that from the data coming in off the DAC2X-2. This is your slope sensor if you guys have them. Make sure you mount them appropriately. There's directions right on top of the sensor. It's mount this side up, forward, so everything kind of makes sense. And a lot of the times what guys will do is they'll mount them just at the base of their GPS globe somewhere that's out of the way. It's safe from getting knocked around or plowed into by dirt, debris, rocks, whatever. Just keep it safe from the environment. DAC settings, again, just an example to show you guys what this looks like when things are selected and there's data coming in. So I've got slope sensor, pitch and roll, roll control, and CAN joystick. So if you're running an external valve, we'll help you get that set up, but there is a different configuration that you can load, and there are different types of valves that you can get from us. So if you don't have a tractor that can be plugged directly into, like John Deere, Case, Cat, those other tractors, we still have an option for you. We've got a single control valve, or we have a dual control for guys wanting to run them on box blades and stuff like that. So we always have an option for you. But yeah, and then if you need to go in here, sometimes guys will run a external joystick with those valves so you can manually move them. And in here is where you would make all those modifications to enabling those different sensors and accessories that you guys get. And that's the DAC settings page. So, but if you don't have a slope sensor or a joystick, don't even worry about this page. Google Earth. For guys who want to load their overhead, so you've got all these ditch lines that you just ditched in this field, and you want to overlay it on like a Google Earth image, we can export that project. So go to Program, Export, and then export the project, and it will export a whole bunch of different files here. And the main one that we want to look at is the shape file, and I believe it is the cut lines shape file that you want to load. So you'll open up Google Earth. This is a free app. Just search it on Google Chrome or Microsoft Edge and download it, and then you can upload. So go to File, click Import, and then what you'll do is select the cut lines shapefile. Do not do the cut points. That's going to give you a whole bunch of data points. It's every single GPS point recorded in your survey or your cut. So you want to select the line. Then it'll just be one data point that pops up, or one line that pops up. As you can see here, I imported my shapefile. This red line is the ditch that I surveyed or cut on. Just kind of showing you guys what this looks like. You can print this off. So this page here, or this view, is printable. There's a little printer button right up here on top in Google Earth. If you click on that, you can put like a label. It asks for, what do you want to call this map? Then you can label your section, quarter, whatever it is. And then you can see each field and all the ditches that you've put in it. DAC connection, what to look for. Starting up in the year, usually we get a lot of phone calls of guys trying to plug stuff in, and what do I need? What lights need to be on? Stuff like that. Well, hopefully this can kind of shorten your time hooking everything up for the year. The green light, or position 7 here on my picture, this green light indicates GPS coming into the controller. So like we've talked about before, if you're running John Deere, Case, some external source of GPS, so this would be like a smart antenna on the scraper, you will have a flickering light on position 7, and that indicates data coming from your GPS down to the controller or this DAC 8000. The light below that, we're going to have a blue light. This indicates connection to the SD drain monitor. This light has to be on, and you will see it flicker about once every second or once every 2 seconds, but these two lights need to be on, or you will not have, you won't have something. SD drain is going to tell you what you're missing. And if it's your GPS or controller, I would start by looking at your LED light strip here on the bottom.
There's maybe this is what you're gonna talk about next, is like online, there's a troubleshooting guide, like if I'm not getting GPS and the steps to go through it. It's a great kind of way to troubleshoot and see if you can solve the problem on your own, or if you have to give in a call, if it's something a little bit more to it. And we'll take a look at that in just like a little bit.
Yeah, yep, we can go through that. Where to find that on the web. DAC 8000 basic tuning. So for guys needing to do fine adjustments on their tractor for control, you can start easily by adjusting your flow up and down. We typically tell guys to start with your flow anywhere from like 60 to 70%. So John Deere, a 6 or a 7. Case, your flow is like 60 to 70% on both the up and down cylinders. If you need fine tuning after that and you just can't get it to control like you think it should or want it to, we can help you walk through that. Here's just a simple guide on how to do that. So this is kind of starting up as well. You do not have to upload your configuration every single time. If it's working, but it's just controlling a little bit erratic or too slow, you can just skip to step 2. So step 2 is adjusting the sliders until your implement moves up. Well, with John Deere tractors, there's a stop safety where even if everything's enabled and you're trying to move these sliders up and down, it's not going to move the implement. These sliders are made to move your implement. And what this does, it adjusts, in a sense, how much signal our controller is sending your tractor. So the higher the signal, the faster your implement should move. Green or plus button should be up, and red minus should be down. So the further this slider goes down the scale, the faster your implement should move. And the same way this way, the higher up on this scale, the faster it should move in the up direction. John Deere, like I said, has a stop safety in. You have to actually be moving a little bit and then have your hydraulics engaged on the tractor side for this to work. And then you can start finding your your minimum movements on your controller.
What you have guys like in a field just driving in a big circle?
Just driving a circle. Yeah, that's probably the easiest way. Just, turn at a rate where you're not going to bind anything up or hit the tire on the scraper or something. Just keep driving in a circle. That way you can look back easily too when you're making these adjustments. The nice thing is that this is a tablet you can pick up and move around, hopefully. So, if you need to take it off the ram mounts for some reasons, because it's easier to hit it or something, as you're looking at the scraper, then do so. But yeah, so adjust your sliders and then adding and subtracting steps if that doesn't fix your issue. A lot of the times the default values that are loaded are going to work pretty well, but every once in a while we get a tractor that needs to get a quick tune or some numbers changed in the configuration. And again, hydraulic flow should be set at 60 to 70%, somewhere in there at the start. Topography maps. So guys, if you haven't had a topography map, I just suggest it makes ditching so much easier than trying to guess at where these ditches go and how they need to be cleaned out, where you need to dump your dirt, where is the water coming from, where are my watershed breaks. Like, you can get all that information from these topography maps. On the left side here, we have a topography, or it's a watersheds map loaded. You can see all of this pink area, or red, or whatever you want to call it. This indicates that all the water in the red flows into the general direction of the ditches that are inside that area. So it all flows into these dark lines. That's what these are. They're major flow depression lines. So all of the water in the red flows into these ditches. And if it were me, use these as guidance. But you see how they're just a little bit squiggly sometimes. You don't always have to follow them exactly. Like in this situation right here, I'd probably cut this ditch straight this way, and then I would just kind of round it here and go straight to your main portion of the ditch. You don't have to follow every little squiggle here, or you're going to have some really complicated squiggly ditches in your field. And usually farming, if something is straight and consistent, it's a lot easier to farm around. Same thing with like this ditch right here. You see how it's squiggly here? I would just make this a north ditch, and then probably take this here, survey around here, and then to make this straight as well, going through there. Again, this is just a suggestion. I'm not saying that going straight will, like through these curves, will always work, because sometimes there are just tiny little hills that you will be removing a ton more dirt, but usually farming straight stuff is a lot easier than the curved stuff. And then on the right side, we do have just a LiDAR image. In our color scheme that we send out with our maps, red and yellow are going to be a lower elevation, and then the blues and pinks and purples are going to be your higher elevation. So you can tell that this field on the right side flows from the southwest to the northeast, or in that general area. And then again, we've got flow depressions, and then so major ones are the thicker lines, and then the minor flow depressions are all these small ones. And kind of like I think Scott mentioned before, like the tree branches, you don't have to go and survey. Like that would be it'd be a ton of time to survey all these little ones. Use those as more of just a reference as to where all that water's coming from. So tree branches, those little ones, just kind of just use them as a like, oh hey, the water's coming from this side or from this area in the field. So KMZ files, this is another thing that you guys get if you get watershed maps done through us. We provide you with a KMZ file as well. There are a couple of apps that you can use to view these, and the way that we really see them used is owners will give a hired hand maybe a picture or this topography map of the field, and let's just say you're in the middle of the growing season and your soybeans have a canopy over them. Well, if you have a decent rain and then now you're trying to go out and spray, let it dry, go out and spray. Give this to your sprayer guy, because then you can say, hey, watch out for these areas in the field, these red spots. Those are going to be potentially areas where the water has collected. And the nice thing is when you load these maps up, you can see your cursor drive around in this field. Another app that that's not on here, but that GK has developed is the GK Tech Field Mapper app. It is available for both iPhone and Android, and you can open up these maps on there as well. So these are, if you want to use another source, but we do have the GK Tech Field Mapper app available to you guys. And then that's another thing too, where you can see your cursor driving around in this map here. Optional, the slope sensor. So this video here, there we go. This video here is showing us we're actually controlling the tilt on this Wolverine as well as the elevation control, and we're forming the back slope area in this ditch. And these machines are awesome; they work really well. But yeah, that is the cross slope control that we can provide you.
Let's go, Luke. Let's go to the web, and then we're gonna go to sddrain.com and take a look at the troubleshooting pages. It's kind of where some stuff is. Take a look at. So under the support one, if you go to the troubleshooting, that's going to be your your operational how-tos. So how do I register my software? Why don't I have a GPS signal? That's a big one. If guys are having trouble getting their GPS signal, you click the drop down on there. It's going to be, they'll ask you that first question. And then after you answer that first question, you can go on to the next step. And then there's just going to be pictures and more questions for you to work through, try and pinpoint what's going on, and give you some. Remember when we were talking about the lights, the green light and the blue lights. So this one's really handy. GPS questions are one of the big ones that guys seem to have. But not only that, another thing to take a look at on support is you can go to manuals. And what's handy about this one is you can go to the online user manual for ditch. Now, on this one, you can just like quick go to where you were talking about. So say you were having issues with your GPS, say you had John Deere 3000, 6000, you're just going to that part, you're going to go right to this particular page. It's going to take you right to what your settings are supposed to be for your 3000 to 6000. I know I've gotten some calls periodically about, hey, well, how can I find what are the settings that I need for my GPS? Quick, easy to find. I just go into the manuals page, go to GPS, or go to the manuals page, go to the online manual, SD drain. You're going to have that table of contents. You can go right to a specific section of the manual and hopefully get a quick answer on what you're looking for.
Yeah, so just kind of gives you a quick spot to go to for troubleshooting, and even if you have questions on how the system operates too. So
Well, that's all we have for you. Thanks for taking a look at the training. You remember your first contact going to be your dealer. To if you have any questions, go ahead and check out the online resources that we have, and then you can also give us a call. So thanks for joining us for 2025 SD Drain Ditch Training.